The morning of the 27th day of Ramadan arrived with a shared vision that transcended the usual boundaries of the city. Ammar and Zikr stood at the foot of the stone bridge, their breath misting in the cool air as they looked toward the distant entrance of Bit Bazaar. A single table is a place for a family, Zikr noted, unrolling a long blueprint across the stone railing. But a table that spans the Vardar is a place for a nation. They began to mark the points where the wooden trestles would first meet the ancient cobblestones. As the sun climbed higher, Karima and Layla began the monumental task of laying the foundation of their hospitality. They carried heavy bolts of white linen, unrolling them with a synchronized flick of their wrists that sent the fabric billowing like sails. "This cloth is more than a covering," Layla whispered, smoothing a wrinkle over the joined edges of two tables. "It is a clean slate where every guest, regardless of where they come from, starts as an equal." Deep within the winding alleys of Bit Bazaar, the logistics of the feast moved with the precision of a heartbeat. Luann and Enos navigated the narrow passages, carrying wide copper trays laden with mountains of honey-soaked dates and dried figs. "The market usually sells to the highest bidder," Enos remarked, steadying the tray on his shoulder. "But today, the finest fruits are reserved for the hands of the community." They moved through the shadows of the bazaar, their cargo glowing like amber in the stray beams of sunlight. At the midpoint of the bridge, where the wind from the river was strongest, Hana and Arben coordinated the placement of hundreds of glass carafes. The water within caught the light, refracting the blue of the sky onto the white linen. "Water is the humblest gift," Hana said, placing a pitcher with care. "Yet it is the first thing we share to break the fast." Arben followed her lead, ensuring each glass was polished and positioned exactly 6 inches from the edge of the table. Near the entrance of the old bazaar, the air became heavy with the intoxicating scent of sesame and yeast. Uncle Adam and Milos emerged from the bakery, carrying towering stacks of warm Ramadan pies, the steam rising in swirling columns. "A loaf of bread is meant to be broken, not held," Adam stated, handing a stack to Milos. They began to distribute the bread along the endless line, the warmth of the crusts seeping through their aprons and into the spirit of the street. The afternoon sun began to dip, and the table now stretched like a white ribbon from the river's edge to the heart of the market. Valon and Drayton moved along the rows, arranging hundreds of chairs and benches gathered from every cafe and mosque in the district. "We are creating a space where the city can finally hear itself speak," Drayton said, sliding a wooden bench into place. Valon nodded, checking the alignment to ensure there was a seat for every traveler and neighbor. As the shadows lengthened, the sky turned a bruised purple, and the first lanterns were readied. Iskra and Besim climbed the decorative poles lining the bridge, hanging brass lamps that would light the way for the coming guests. "The light doesn't just show us the food," Iskra said, her hand steady as she secured a hook. "It shows us the faces of those we haven't met yet." Besim watched her work, the first flicker of a flame dancing in the glass of the lantern he held. The guests began to arrive long before the sun had fully vanished. Families from the hills, merchants from the bazaar, and students from the university. Selma and Omer stood at the transition point where the bridge met the shore, welcoming the tide of people. "There is no guest of honor today," Selma noted, gesturing toward the empty seats. "Or rather, every person who sits down is the guest of honor," Omer smiled, directing a group of elders toward a section of the table where the breeze was gentlest. High above on the ramparts of the Kale fortress, Elif and Tealman looked down at the breathtaking sight of the city's transformation. The table was no longer just a piece of furniture. It was a glowing artery of light and unity connecting the two halves of Skopje. "From here you can't see the divisions," Tealman whispered, leaning against the ancient stone wall. "You only see the bridge." Elif nodded, her eyes fixed on the thousands of people now seated as one, waiting for the signal. At the exact moment the azan echoed from the Mustafa Pasha Mosque, a profound silence fell over the 1,000-meter table. Ammar and Hana sat together at the very center of the bridge, the Vardar rushing beneath them, Together, they reached for a single date, the traditional first bite of the iftar. "The table has no end tonight," Hana whispered as the city began to eat in unison. Ammar looked at the faces stretching into the distance and realized that the bridge wasn't made of stone anymore. It was made